Hello again, it's Mr. Pete, your internet shop teacher, and I'm here again in the beautiful Studio G with a very special guest from Mississippi. What town is it again?
Morton, Mississippi.
Morton, Mississippi, and you will recognize Clarke EASTERLING here from Windy Hill Foundry. I'm so glad to have him here. They spent the night with us. We've had great conversation, and now I thought I'd film a little of this for YouTube. So welcome to Illinois Valley, Clarke.
Well, thanks.
Glad to have you.
And it was neat. We were able to solve half the world's problems last night.
So you people might find things to get a little bit better after this in the United States, I hope.
Oh, yeah, we're doing our best to do our part, aren't we?
But Clarke and I have met several times, so we are not strangers to one another. And as a matter of fact, we've become fast friends. We talk on the phone once in a while, and I watch his channel. Be sure and watch Windy Hill Foundry channel. You'll enjoy that if you are not familiar with it. And Clarke is very recently retired from his day job, even though he's a young man.
Semi-retired is the actual term for it, but yes. And it's I'm still adjusting. I was telling Lyle on my way up here yesterday, I felt the need to let my old boss know I'm going to be leaving town for a week. I don't know why, I just felt like I needed to inform him of that. Of course, he approved.
So, what are your plans now with your retirement? Are you going to work full-time in the foundry, expand it a little bit?
A little bit. We don't want to get too far ahead of what we're doing right now. I mean, I really had no choice but to retire because of the work that we're taking on currently. I can't keep up with both, and there were other reasons. My dad, I'm the closest one that lives to my father, so that was another reason for the decision to be closer to him when he needs me. And so this it should on paper all work out, right? But we'll see. Right now, it's not going too smoothly. I was telling Lyle, we were working up until 2 a.m. the night before last just to get some jobs completed, just to get out of there, just to get up this direction. We have several stops to make to see some customers, but I never, anytime I'm coming close to Mr. Pete's place, I always want to, if he's around, I always enjoy dropping in to visit him. For those, and you know, and I tell you guys often about Mr. Pete, joking about him or whatever, but I have a lot of respect for him. He's got a wealth of information on YouTube on different subjects, and you know, he's very entertaining. And if you are new to his channel, I highly recommend you go back and you search as much as you can that vast array of video knowledge that he's got out there. He's a very clever man, and I've picked up a lot of things just watching his videos, like as we were talking yesterday, what was the windlass. The windlass. Never heard of a windlass.
Yeah, that's an old video.
It was, and but yeah. As far as my retirement, I am semi-retired from one and full-time in the other one now. Of course, I was working full-time on this part-time job for the last 3 or 4 years. We were putting in, goodness, probably 60 hours a week with me holding down a day job. So,
and a long commute as well.
Yeah, 2 hours a day just driving back and forth. So.
Well, I like to tease Clarke every time I see him in that, Clarke, could you possibly have found a more difficult trade to pursue as you get older? One that could be more physically demanding with lifting and heat and the danger and the pure drudgery of working in a foundry. You know, this is something that a lot of people want to get out of, and you are embarking on that career.
Diving in it head first here.
Yeah. And it's not easy, especially an iron foundry is so terribly hot and dangerous.
It is the biggest challenge of my life. I have You know, and I'm not, I guess I don't want to sound arrogant here, but anything I've ever done from machining to woodworking, I pretty much conquered that. There's nothing I can't make on that end of it. Now, then you get into castings. That's something I've often wondered about when I was a machinist. You know, when we would receive castings, I would study them and I'd go, this is very interesting. I can see how the majority of this could have been put in sand and pulled out, but then you start seeing this complicated core work that goes on in them, and it really, I knew there had to be a lot more there, but I had that mindset back then. It's still just menial work, hot, dangerous menial work, which a lot of it is. But there is so much more to foundry work than any other profession, I believe. And there's no way anybody is ever going to learn everything there is to know about foundry work. It is a challenge that has driven me, and I think that's the reason I went this way. One of the guys that supplies my brake rotors for us, he asked me, he said, of all things, why couldn't you take up a job making stuff out of styrofoam? You know, and I wish it was that easy, guys. But in order to do for, you know, people don't want styrofoam; they want good gray iron. And there's enough people out there doing, even on the small scale, aluminum jobs. I wasn't going to get very far trying to do that. Now I will say I started out in that direction just to learn, right? You have to have something to get you started on. So aluminum was my stepping stone to start learning how to do proper molding. And there's a lot of good guys, including Mr. Pete, that have done molding and casting on their channels. And there is one particular guy, old foundryman. I have a lot of respect for him. He is in Australia. Are you familiar with him?
Yes, I have watched his video.
And
he's a good guy.
He disappeared for a while, but I noticed the other day he's making a comeback on his videos. And
I thought the same thing. Where is this guy? And all of a sudden that popped up on my feed.
So if you guys haven't seen Old Foundryman, you should check his channel out, subscribe to that as well. But I've learned a lot, not just through the books. YouTube has been a very good teaching aid for me as well, following particular people like Mr. Pete himself and Martin, the old foundryman.
Because this certainly is a dying trade as far as young people taking it on. It's not being taught at all in the schools, I don't believe. I did here in town. We made aluminum casting for 40 years, and the kids liked that, but I was teaching buggy whip making in a way because it isn't done. And because of this, what Clarke is doing, there are very few foundries that will take on small jobs or one-of jobs. If you brought in a pattern that they aren't interested in, they'll say, yeah, we'll get to it, and they never will. They'll probably be polite. Some of them will just plain turn you down. So Clarke is kind of filling that need for people that are doing restorations or need one or two or a dozen castings if you are provided with decent patterns to make them. So,
and if your turnaround time isn't 1 or 2 weeks, then chances are I can work with you. That's been one of the problems, and I always try to reassure people: look, this isn't going to happen overnight. We will do it. I'm very interested in your. And that's one thing I have stuck with from the time I started this. Each customer is just as important as the other. So I always try to treat every single job as if I'm putting my heart into it, right? I want to make sure that it's the best I can do. And there's been a lot of jobs I've sent out that I was not happy with. I wish I could have done better. And if I knew what to do better, right, I would have done it.
There's a learning curve.
Yeah. But it's, like I said, it's been a huge challenge, and that's been my driving force. And you know, people say, well, aren't you worried about somebody putting it? No, I'm not worried. Nobody wants to work this hard. Nobody.
There's no competition. That's what I left out of my last little bit here, is that there is no competition at all for what you're doing.
You have to be crazy to want to do this.
Well, you and I are half crazy anyway,
Yeah.
spending all our time making YouTube videos, but, you know, we enjoy it, and I have plenty of time because I'm fully retired, so I guess you could say that YouTube is virtually my full-time job, but, and now pretty much yours. So there's a balance there with you between making the videos and actually trying to get the castings done in a timely manner.
That's been its own, like I said, that's been a challenge all on its own. YouTube, you know, I don't want to just, I've got tons of video footage, but very little time to edit all this and try to make a good quality video. Now, there's a lot of videos of mine out there that are as cheesy as they get because it's stuff that I just threw it together just to get the information out there. All right, guys, this is what we did last week, but I just haven't had time to format it in a way that looks like a good quality video. And I catch myself doing that a lot here lately.
I think there's a lot of people out there that do not realize how much time that it takes to make a quality video. For instance, I may be making a vise, machining it and all that. I could probably do that in 2 or 3 days of just machining, but to videotape that may take even 10 times that long because you're worried about camera angles and lighting and audio and so many different things involved, and then making mistakes, and then the editing as well can take an awful long time, and it is, to me, a very unpleasant task. And especially with my old slow computer, which I hope to replace here within a month.
So with that said, I do very few videos on the volume of castings that we produce out there just because of the time it takes to do these videos. Now, on a customer's request, or if I find that it's something a lot different than what we normally ram up, I will go ahead and put a video out on that. But I would say you're only seeing about 10% of what's actually coming through. And because if we had to do a YouTube video on every single thing, I'd never get any work out. It wouldn't happen.
Well, yeah, I hear what you're saying. I've beaten this subject to death over and over regarding the Starrett surface gauge and the purpose of the ball. And Clarke is the one that finally came up with what I believe is the correct answer, why they put this ball. Starrett themselves do not know, but the whole idea here is that you can very quickly assemble it. It helps to align that piece. If you just have a square end, it can be kind of a struggle getting the alignment. So thank you, Clarke, for explaining that to Starrett and the rest of the world.
Yeah, well, you know, just looking at that, if you say the center line of that spherical ball is going to always establish one part of your axis of alignment, then all you got to do is find the other end, especially when you take short little objects like that and you're trying to put something that may only have a matter of 5/10 difference between the shaft and the clamp. When you got a very short sleeved area like that, it would be hard to, let's say if that thing was brand new, it probably would have been a lot tighter. And it would have been very hard to assemble that, get it started straight, get it without the aid of excuse me. It would have been hard to get the thing started straight without the aid of a hammer.
I promise that I won't talk about this anymore, even though I made that promise before. And you know that I can whip a dead horse, so.
Well, and you know, I couldn't shut up. I saw that video and it was just bugging me to death. I had to put my 2 cents into it, but yeah.
So you are undertaking a remodeling or putting up a new building and expanding?
Well, the building is there. We're just having to fill in the inside now. Basically is what we're wanting to do. The original part of the building is a 36 by 36 open pole building, and it's got a dirt floor, and that's where we do all our molding and our pouring. But because of the Mississippi humidity and heat, every day is different. So you're fighting, and I'm all about consistency, guys. if you know, when one day it takes a glass of water to a batch of sand to get it to the right consistency, the next day the humidity's different, the heat's different, and you're dumping probably 2 glasses in there. Nothing's ever consistent. So we want to get that climate controlled to where we can at least maintain consistency on the molding end of it. Not to mention actually be able to feel good in there, right? Because it's sweltering conditions out there. This tin building gets up to 100, it passes 100 degrees on the summer days. And even with the fans going, it's very brutal. And this poor girl that I had working for me a couple of years ago, I gotta hand it to her. She was out there when I would be at my day job starting at the hottest part of the day. And I'd come home and that poor kid, she was literally drenched from but I want to get away from that. I want, especially as I get older, and I need to get some of this weight off. But that having it climate controlled should benefit us tremendously on the molding end of it, on the quality of our molding, and just make it a little more enjoyable to do this, right?
Let me interject here with a little story about when I was in college, and this revolves around checking the moisture content of Foundry sand. And the easy way of doing it, but it's only semi-accurate, is just to put your hand in there and squeeze the sand and then examine it, break it apart, and you can get a pretty good ballpark figure on how much moisture is in there. But in college, one of the very first demonstrations that I was required to do in a class, everyone had to come up with a demonstration. I borrowed from my dad's high school a kit, and it looked like an attaché case, but it was a beautiful oak kit, and you would open it up, and inside was a moisture tester for Foundry men, and it used carbide powder to check the moisture. So you would weigh the sand out a certain quantity, put it in this canister, and then you would add a certain amount of carbide, same as you use in a carbide lamp, and then you would close it. There was a clamp to get it very tight. You would shake the heck out of it, wait a minute or so, and then turn the thing upside down, and the gauge was built into the bottom, and it told the exact moisture content of the sand. So that was the very first demonstration that I gave, and I got an A on it, and it kind of blew the teacher away too, because he had never seen such a thing. Yeah. And the class was mesmerized by it, a bunch of 20-year-old, 21-year-old guys. So that's what I did, and then I realized from that I was capable of giving a demonstration. So that helped me a lot.
One of your first experiences is teaching, huh?
It was, yeah.
Pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm. And
the moisture gauge, that I'm still trying to figure out how that would work with a carbide powder.
Yeah, well.
Was it a powder, or was it a paste?
No, it was a powder, very fine, like flour, so that it would mix very quickly, and then it created pressure in there. So obviously we were reading a pressure gauge, not really a moisture gauge, I would suppose, from what I remember. That's a long time ago.
Probably worked somewhat like a catalyst to the water then, and the reaction would...
Mm-hmm. Huh. And a lot of people out there don't know what carbide is. And I forgot the first name. There's 2 words, so such and such a carbide. Not tungsten carbide by any means. And not silicon carbide. I'm 79. I can't remember things. And I've told you here, I've got some cognitive declining going. It will happen to all of you.
I would say you're doing pretty good at that age.
Well, yeah. I'm self-conscious about it, though, when I can't find the right word. But when I think back, I've been that way for 40 years. Where I run downstairs to get something, and then I just stand there looking, why did I come down here? But I think that is something that happens to just about everybody at some time. So.
Yeah, Josie says I've just gotten a lot worse in the last 5 years.
Yeah, but it's kind of hard to measure that.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, we took a short break so that Clarke could run out to the truck and gather a few of the castings, because in fact he's on his way to Michigan to deliver some of these castings, and then you're going over.
To the streetcar museum, and
Well, how are you going to get across Lake Michigan?
we're going to take a cruise.
A cruise, okay.
Yeah, I've never been on a ferry before, so that's the closest thing to a cruise I guess I'll ever be on.
Do they have a buffet and
We're
entertainment?
gonna find out. If not, I'm gonna bring my own.
So anyway, Clarke just went out and he made some beautiful brass castings that he's going to deliver first to the Trolley.
Yeah, well, first we're gonna go to the Port Austin Lighthouse. It's called the Port Austin Reef Lighthouse in Port Austin, Michigan, and we're gonna board a boat from there, and they're gonna take us on out to the lighthouse. You can't drive to it, so they have a construction crew working there. I forgot how much they are spending on this project, but it's a pretty major operation they got going on right now, I believe, and they're waiting on these hinges that I had to make. They were able to, they sent me a box of battered hinges. Half of them were missing. The other half of the hinges are underwater now somewhere out there, and from the century of abusive wind, and I don't guess they have hurricanes up there, but I guess anyway they're wanting they wanted to replicate these hinges.
Okay, here are the castings that are going to be delivered.
Yeah, and we only had to make 2 sets of these, and they needed 4 sets of these. Now, of course, we don't do the machining work. I ended up doing most of it on these, though. I did have my buddy Bill Zaremba. He had a countersink available for these, so we went ahead and did this at his shop, and then we had to cast some bar stock for the screws. I forgot to bring the screws, trust me. We have screws that go with these that also match the material, so we were able to pour it from the same batch.
So why didn't you just buy some of these at Home Depot?
Well, you know, if you could find them there, I'm sure they would have. But yeah, these were made in some little village foundry along the shoreline there, and you know, over 100 years ago. So I don't think they had a patent on the design at that time.
They're beautiful, incredibly heavy.
Yes, they're very, very heavy.
Very heavy. And they move nicely, no bind, so he's got the hole drilled perfectly in line, which is no easy job, really.
And if you will, in one of my future videos, I'm going to show how I actually did this particular hole. I'm not going to tell you here. I don't want to spoil the secret, but it's you have to have both holes looking at each other. You have to have no run out from this hole to that or this hole to that in order for that pin to go accurately through the center. Mm-hmm. So, and my channel is not about machining, guys, but on this particular application, I had no choice but to get it done, and I resorted to doing it on my 1915 lathe. But this bracket right here
is this a tuning fork?
Yeah, it looks like it. You could.
I don't know if you can hear that on the camera. I doubt it, but anyway, it is humming quite at a low frequency. Go ahead, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Well, you know, I should have already had this information pulled up on it. I was fixing to tell you the exact year of that streetcar. If it's not too late, can we pause this and I'll bring that information up.
We're going to pause it here real quickly.
All right, guys, so this casting right here, this is called a streetcar trolley harp. And if you're familiar with a streetcar, you see these power lines overhead that they run off a wheel or a pulley. Well, the pulley sits in here, the sieve. What's the correct term for that, Mr. Pete? Would it be a trolley wheel?
I don't know the correct term. That's actually before my time.
Yeah, but anyway, the apparatus that holds the wheel is called a harp, and this particular one is made for I believe a 1908 TCRT 1300, and on my video, I'm going to do a video just on making these, and I will be plugging in another video for you to check out the museum
All right.
and
Yeah,
some of
good.
their street cars. But this is silicon bronze, along with, and let me back up, the hinges are manganese bronze. It's an excellent marine metal to use. Of course, where they're at, there's no salt water, is there? So I probably didn't need to do that in marine bronze, but just for historical purposes, I decided to keep it straight. Now this is silicon bronze per request by the customer. And I don't know what this hole is on the side. I think that was for some kind of a cable, maybe to help pull it down.
That's exactly what it is, because the conductor or whatever would get out and if it came off the
Disconnect.
track and he would pull it down, it was insulated, a piece of rope.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's okay. I just learned something there.
Yeah, I believe that's what it's for. Somebody can correct us. I'm sure that people out there, there's some experts out there that know more than we do.
Yeah. Now, guys, we were finishing this up. This is one of the projects we were working on at 2 in the morning the other day. So I didn't get a chance to clean this up as much as I would like to have. There's still some coarse sand stuck in here, but it had a very elaborate core that you would lay in place, and which creates this, because your casting is formed like this. So you got a pillar of sand that goes right in here, and then it creates this through hole that comes out at the end. And yeah, I was telling Mr. Pete I had several of my old colleagues from my old day job over, and we were wanting to do a mold presentation with them there, and we decided to pick this one because of the intricate core work.
Yeah, I'll be interested in seeing that.
Yeah.
So this is the mission that Clarke is actually on, is delivering these, hand delivering them, and Josie is going back home for a while.
Everything has a purpose, right? So
Everything.
I decided I had to get her back to Iowa, and in the process, you know, I don't have another day job after Report 2. I need a break now. I haven't had one since I left the day job, so we're going to make the best of it on this trip.
All right, let's sit back down and continue our chat. Okay, we're back, and Clarke is leaving here in about an hour or so, you know, on the rest of his trip. So it was about, what, 750 miles
Yeah.
here from Mississippi. So it is a long haul.
That's one reason I don't. I would love Mr. Pete to come and visit me anytime he wants, but it's not a skip down the road for him. So I understand that.
That's a 2 or 3 day trip for me.
Yeah.
I never, even when I was younger, I can't stand to go more than about 350 or 400 miles a day. It's just physical labor for me, and I'm a white knuckle driver, especially on busy highways.
Yeah.
So it drains me.
In St. Louis, yeah, that's a nightmare trying to drive through there.
And that's nothing compared to Chicago or Gary, Indiana. Are you going to go through the Gary, Indiana area there, the lower part of the lake today?
Well, we're going to go. No, I think we're going to bypass that.
Oh, true. If you can, yeah. My brother always called that the armpit of the nation, because he was teaching at the Calumet campus there of a university, and he would travel that way every day, and that's 40 years ago.
Yeah.
That was terrible. So
We're going to go kind of around and up to Michigan, and then we're going to cut across the lake on the ferry on my cruise, and and go into Wisconsin. So we should hopefully it'll be a very slow paced ride for us. I hope not too slow, but I don't want to. I want to avoid that kind of mess if I can.
I hope that you film some of your restoration work on your mullers and your other molding equipment that you required over the years. That some of it is antique or it's been stored outdoors, so it needs a lot of work, but it's interesting for people to see this equipment they've never seen before, or if it was just sitting out in the yard someplace, they would have no clue of its function.
Yeah. Yeah, and when I try to, and I've got good friends that are always looking for this equipment, right? Trying to keep their eye out for me. And for me to try to explain to them what these things look like, it gets hairy. Andrew Alexander's a good example. He didn't know what a muller was, and I was trying to tell him to keep his eye out for that. Of course, he found everything Foundry related except a muller until lately, and he got that. He gave me a muller, one just like yours, as a matter of fact, the mini mite.
The mini mite. Yeah.
He gave me that earlier this year, and but as far as maintenance goes, I do try to do some maintenance video. This last video I got out is of me experimenting with what I just recently purchased. But I've got one video out called the Muller Report, and I had several people go off on me. They didn't even watch the video. They thought I was getting political.
The Muller Report.
The Muller Report.
It sounds sinister.
I think I actually had the American flag for the thumbnail too. You know, I had a lot of clicks from certain people, and then none from my regulars on that. So.
What you people out there might not understand, but sometimes as we're making a video, we are entertaining ourselves.
Yeah.
I can be self-entertaining. I can be driving down the road and crack myself up and burst into a chuckle or a laugh. So sometimes I'm doing that as I'm making a video. And I think I did that when I was teaching as well. And it works well because it adds a little humor to either the video or to the lesson when you have high school students who you have to be semi-entertaining because they have an attention span of 6 minutes, maybe.
Yeah.
So try to keep them interested, and believe me, that's not easy.
Well, I was trying to film as I went on that one, and I think that video went pretty well. I even I do some very primitive maintenance sometimes, guys, just to get me by. And in this particular video, I had to make a wooden thrust bearing just to make the muller work. And Brian Block, if you're not familiar with him, he chimes in.
Hi, Brian.
He trolls me sometimes. And he was making fun of my wooden thrust bearing. And of course, I got him back on his next video. He was repairing this great big Caterpillar transmission or something. And I told him, I said, if you had only had a wood thrust bearing in there, that thing wouldn't have broke. But,
you know, Brian was here during my meet and greet 4 years ago or so. So I was so happy to meet him, and I hope he's watching this video. But anyway, he's here in his girlfriend's SUV, which I think is about the size of this Toyota sitting here. And someone brought him some huge, I believe they were angle plates. But everything that Brian has is big. So these angle plates weighed hundreds and hundreds of pounds. And so they're out in the driveway just 50 feet from here. And I got some planks, and there's about 6 or 8 guys trying to slide those out of a truck and into an SUV, and he's going back to Kentucky with these. So that was a good laugh. I wish I would have filmed that.
If you had only known in advance, you would have rented a forklift to be out here on the side. Huh?
Those were finger pinchers.
But yeah, Brian, I like Brian. You know, he had announced last month that he lost his dog, and I felt so bad for him because
I didn't know that.
Yeah, Bailey. He lost Bailey, so he. And you know, when you get it like me, I'm so attached to my dog now. Things spoiled rotten. It's going to be tough when her day is up. So, but Brian I had invited him out to our event that we have in March, and he wanted to come, but it was because of his dog at that time was pretty sick. He didn't want to leave from home. But we'll see if we can't get him out there. Of course, you're always invited, and. I know, I know.
Thank you.
Maybe you can catch a ride with Brian down there.
Well, I don't know how far it is to Brian's, but that's Kentucky, so
yeah. He could swing by and pick you up, I'm sure.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Brian's going, shut up, Clarke.
Yeah, he's a good guy. He's probably getting ready to harvest that corn that's going to be used to make whiskey.
Yeah.
So he's busy too, and he tackles these huge, impossible jobs. He does impossible jobs.
Yeah.
That no one else would ever consider.
Yeah.
But then again, you do too in the Foundry. These trolley parts here made out of bronze. where would those be made if it wasn't for you and possibly a few other guys in the country that would do something like that?
Well, you could get the stuff done, but you'd have to pay a premium price for it. And the funny thing is, I've had people talk about how expensive I am. When you have to recast something 2 or 3 times before you're finally satisfied with the results, let it go, you may have more than that tied up in it. So, I consider, sometimes I catch myself doing charity work just to get the customer what they need. These bigger foundries, they're not going to be that forgiving. They're going to take it to, they're going to take you to the bank on that.
Well, they have bean counters
Yeah.
that are doing the billing and the invoicing, and they're going to make money on it. But I've mentioned this before, but of course I'm in Illinois where there's an awful lot of Caterpillar plants. But in the last 6 months or so, there was a terrible accident at the Mapleton Caterpillar Foundry, which is an iron foundry, and I have been in that foundry many years ago and in the pattern shops. But a man fell into the crucible of molten iron and of course died instantly. So it was just a terrible incident. They shut the plant down, send everybody home, and I don't know, there'll be maybe lawsuits, it's
Yeah,
a terrible tragedy.
I read a little bit about that, and it sounds like he was on the induction deck going for a test sample, and he must have lost his footing somehow. And when you're in that kind of environment with that many tons of molten iron right there in front of you, which is right if you're on the deck, then it's below the deck, so it's not like you're standing next to the crucible. You're actually standing over it.
Yeah.
And the ladle, whatever their terminology is. So when you're thinking about the intense lighting, even you're wearing your proper PPE, but you're kind of blinded at certain points. Plus, you have a lot of blind sights because of what you're having to wear. And I was just trying to even though I've never been there, I was trying to picture how that could have happened. It's very dangerous work, even on the small scale stuff I'm doing. I dropped a whole crucible of iron right between my feet one day. It slipped out of the tongs as we were pulling it out of the furnace. And I dumped, about 40 or 50 pounds right there. Luckily, I did like Fred Flintstone, and I went straight up and out. So I didn't get burned, but you just have to be prepared. You always have to be prepared when you're messing with molten metals.
Yeah, that was kind of an irrelevant story, I think, but I wanted you viewers out there to know how dangerous a foundry is or can be if you're not careful.
A friend of mine in Meridian, his father used to work at a foundry in Birmingham back in the 40s or 50s, and he was telling me that his father would, I think he said there had been several people that were literally vaporized. Never found anything of them. So it's a very intense heat that if you've never been around molten iron, you don't know what heat is until you've had to get up close to that. We used to do events. Well, we still do. We have events at the Soleil Steam Festival, which, by the way, if you're watching this and you're down in that area well, it doesn't matter if you are or not. Plan on a trip to come to the Soleil Steam Festival. It's going to be the first weekend of November. Bring your family. There's something for everybody to see there. I highly recommend it. It's the old Soleil Steam Feed Works from 1900s. Virtually everything's the same. Nothing has changed. They have an old line shaft driving equipment in the machine shop, and then across Steam Alley, which is just a 20-foot width, they have the old original foundry building, and upstairs they have all the foundry patterns. You can see all that. See the old washrooms from 1900.
Adam has a video on that.
He does.
Yeah,
so if you can't make it out there, at least check Adam Booth's videos out on it. But anyway, I do a demonstration out there every year, and you tell people, look, this thing's going to be hot when I open the lid. You need to get back. and they don't listen, right? So, of course, you know, by the time I flip my hood down, I'm having to focus on what I'm doing. I can't pay attention to anybody else anymore. So, and sure enough, I open that lid and you'll hear them behind me falling over each other, trying to get away from that thing. The heat's just cooking you at 20 feet away.
The radiation, and it's just instant. I mean, bam, it just hits you, and it's scary.
But yeah, Adam, it's funny. I had never met Adam. I had done a job for him prior to this, and he and Abby just happened to be there. I didn't invite him, and I saw him walking around my area looking and videoing, and I said, Adam? He turned around looking at me. Of course, I knew him based off YouTube, but he didn't know who I was, and I told him, I said, I think I just did a job for you last week. And anyways, from there, Adam and I became good friends, and
great man.
we've come a long way. And I've had Adam out several times since then at the Sule Steam Festival, where he was able to get some very good video footage of all that.
And Adam, of course, was sitting in this very chair 2 weeks ago, so check my video out of that conversation if you haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, Mr. Pete asked me last night to do this interview with me, and I thought it was funny. You got a super YouTuber here interviewing a YouTube peon.
Well, I don't see that.
And you had Adam here last week,
who is a superstar, and I'm the peon in that one, so we can laugh about it.
Yeah, I don't think nothing of it. As I've told Mr. Pete to begin with, when I started that YouTube channel, I wasn't out to be the latest and greatest. It was all about promoting my business, and it still is. I like people. I want to be able to show people what can be done, what we do there, and you know, that way, and also give people ideas of what kind of patterns not to send me. If they're not an actual Foundry pattern, we need to get one, because I had a nightmare. And I'm not going to make anybody, I don't want to down anybody. I think a lot of this man, but he sent me some parts that he wanted cast in, he sent me a cast iron piece, 2-piece casting. Very rough, extremely rough. We spent 2 days sanding on it, trying to prep it in order to get it to cast, and it just we couldn't get it to pull from the mold.
No.
And it was partly my fault, because I've been sitting on this job 6 months or more, and I haven't, but it's not like I've had the time to just examine everybody's pattern as it comes in. Basically, when it comes in, I'm just making sure all the contents are there. I don't examine it too much under a microscope. So then it was time to actually get this job out, and I wasn't able to get the thing to pull. And it wouldn't have bothered me if this job came in a week ago, right? And we find this out, but for me to be sitting on it 6 months and then find out at the last minute this isn't going to work, it killed me to have to tell him that, because we wasted a good 2 days doing everything we could to try to make that work. And and this is one of the main issues. This particular part had very thin sections that come up, sidewalls, and on a pattern you're going to have a draft angle on those very thin fins. Well, when it's been cast down here, that shrinks in, and it'll create negative draft, which will hook into the sand every time and tear it out. So there's no amount of sanding you can do to that to build it back out, or take that profile down to where it will release. So,
you know, a lot of people don't understand pattern making because it's not talked about anymore, but if I can find the little quote, it's a paragraph of explaining what a foundryman is, and I think it's in one of the old Foundry catalogs. I'll put it at the end of the video if I can find it. But they call a pattern maker the exalted craftsman, in that what he does is so complicated because of the fact that it's going to shrink in size, and it's going to shrink in thick spots, and it has to be tapered in every direction so it will withdraw, and there might be cores involved, so it's an incredibly complex process of making patterns possibly more difficult than die making and some other things that are done in metal.
There is a lot of forecasting you have to do.
Yeah.
And just like that pattern for the trolley car, everything was done beautifully on the pattern. The one thing that was left off, and they didn't know, I didn't know either, we had to put a riser on the very top of that pad of the ear in order, because it was shrinking. We didn't see that. We didn't catch that until the last second. So there's, as Mr. Pete said, there is so much involved with pattern making, and I wish I had brought, I have one customer, his name is Richard Freer. He did a beautiful job on these spoked wheels that go on a lathe. They're gear lathes. They're lathe gears. And the joinery techniques that he used, I mean, he knew what he was doing. He knew how to go. We're trying to tie this up and you're distracting me big time.
All right.
I just want to make sure you don't take this.
We'll,
I know.
yeah, we're just about done.
You can put those back in.
Yeah,
I don't,
Yeah.
I just want to show this to the
yeah,
team.
okay.
Okay.
Yeah, well, we're gonna wrap it up here directly, so
Okay.
it's all right. We'll cut that out, don't worry about it. And
Well, all right, so we'll start back here then.
all right,
I'll talk about Richard Freer.
okay.
All right, so one of my customers, Richard Freer, he is an excellent pattern maker. He's a retired pattern maker. He lives up in New York. And I wish I had brought some of his examples with me. I didn't know we were going to do this, or I would have. I would have brought several I would have brought the actual pattern for that, just to give you an idea of what all is involved with this.
We'll do another interview.
We'll have to do that sometime.
Yeah, this is running long enough anyway, but go ahead.
Yeah, and but yeah, Richard did his joinery techniques. Everything is very well thought out to deal with not only the shrinkage of the part, but the actual wood movement in a pattern. Because these patterns have to be designed not only to minimize wood movement, they have to be able to endure a lot of pounding over the years if they're going to be used. It's like very abusive on a pattern when you're having to use the things.
They beat the heck out of those patterns. Yeah. I mean, not only this, but they toss them around. Oh, they're tough on them.
I don't do that, Richard, but
I've seen it done.
But yes, there's a lot to it. A lot to it. You just because you got a table saw doesn't mean you're a pattern maker. There's a lot to this.
All right, we're going to wrap this conversation up because Clarke has to get on the road. He's got about a 7 or 8 hour drive up into Michigan yet today, and it's already 10 o'clock. So again, I appreciate you coming to visit me and spending time with me and making this video with me. And I hope you people out there enjoy it, and be sure and watch his video. Take a look at his hat here, Windy Hill Foundry.
Yeah.
Does that show up? So watch his videos, watch my 1,300 videos under Mr. Pete or Tubalcain, and I hope to see you in future videos. So long.